Alright, so I'm on my lunch break, and I'm like, you know what? Since I'm on my lunch break, I might as well do this. I'm covering that up, but a little. So since I'm on my lunch break, I might as well do this, right? While I was sitting, before I came on my lunch break, I was writing these things down, and some of the topics. One of the topics I'm going to talk about is the big quit versus the big reset, right? So I know the big quit is old. Everybody already been done quit their jobs, and it's like, nope, forget it, right? So I would argue that the big quit ushered in the big reset, right? So the big quit started because of the COVID isolation, right? Everybody in isolated in COVID, you start realizing how much time you don't have to do activities that you love. You start realizing the people around you that might be toxic. You start realizing the dreams that you might have wanted to follow if you had the time, or if you weren't doing something that you were just tolerating, right? So I feel like the COVID isolation like ushered in that part of like the big quit versus the big reset, right? So that COVID isolation brings us to the point, this second point, which is realizing what is lacking in your life, right? And a lot of people started realizing, like, hey, this is nice. I never get to spend this much time with my family, or this is nice. I never get to paint anymore. I never get to draw anymore. Whatever passion that you lost because you got caught up in the humdrum of 9 to 5 daily working life, right? It's realizing the things that bring that fire to your life, that passion, right? You know, like they said, some people act like a big kid, and society tries to condition adults to like distance themselves from their passions and the things that make them feel like a big kid, right? But I would argue those are the things that you should tap into to to enrich your life and to bring the utmost joy to yourself, right? So you're realizing what it is that took the sparkly feeling, the motivation, the drive, the wonder, the the excitement about living life. Like you're starting to realizing what is it that's missing, what was taken out, right? So once you get to that point and you're like, oh, this is nice, I get to, right, and then everybody goes back to work after all that isolation, and this is the intolerable period where it's like, I can't take it anymore. One more second of this, I'm gonna lose it, right? The intolerable period, because you started realizing, oh, I don't necessarily want to do this, but I feel like I have to do this kind of thing. And I feel like a lot of people went through that after the COVID isolation and realizing what they wanted. Where it's like, oh, I feel like I have to do this. Like I don't even want to do this. I feel like I'm stuck in this thing. Yada 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 yada. Right? The intolerable period. Right. So after the intolerable period passes, um, usually the intolerable part ends when you decide to take action. You either stick it out and realize that you don't like it, but you're sticking out until you find the next thing, or you're looking for the next thing, or you quit because you can't take it anymore. It's so intolerable, right? So then this is the part where everybody gets confused, right? The intolerable period, right? You're either looking for something else, you don't have something else, you quit it, you stopped it because you just couldn't take it anymore, right? And then we're at the next part, which is the what now period, right? You, like I said, you either look for another opportunity or you realize, okay, I don't mind doing something that I don't really necessarily want, but as long as I come up with something, right? The what now period is what leads to the restructure period, which is the big reset in your life, where it's like, okay, it felt intolerable to me because I know I don't want to do this thing. But then after you have the what now and the restructure period, where it's like, oh, okay, maybe I'll do this one thing that I'm not necessarily keen on it, but I can do it and it's not too bad. But just as long as it gets me from point A to point B, right? And then in the intolerable period, people get so upset because it's like I can't take it anymore. But before you get to the intolerable period, what a lot of people miss is the restructure, right? You have to come up with a structure on how you're going to reach your goal. And if you don't have a structure on how you're going to reach your goal, the intolerable period seems so excruciating. Like it feels like you're going to die if you don't have the plan to how you're going to do this thing that you want to do, right? So I feel like a lot of people get stuck in that, where it's like the intolerable and the what now. Because when it starts to feel like that, when you're starting to feel that sense of push where it's like, I can't take this, you really do have to start making up the plan, or you're going to be lost when you decide that you can't tolerate it anymore. But if you had a plan already, or you started coming up with a plan, it's not, you're not going to feel as lost when you start to restructure and do the things that you want to do in your life, right? So yeah, that's what I have for the big quit versus the big reset. So I feel like a lot of people end up following the big quit because they didn't come up with that restructure point. They didn't come up with, okay, what's point A, B, C, D, E, F, right? They didn't come up with that, right? So then they get caught in complaining about how unsatisfied they are and not coming up with a plan to change it. And then the big reset, I feel like, is the normal period that happens after the big quit. Like I said, you came up with a plan and you have an actual plan you're going to follow in order to reach your goals, right? So that's why I say it, like I did verses, but they come hand in hand. Sometimes you can't have the big reset without the big quit, right? And sometimes you can't have the big quit without the big reset. They go hand in hand. So I feel like us as individuals are going through this, but it's also us as a society. Because in society, you see supply chains breaking, businesses are going out, there are new models being, the whole Silicon Valley startup, those are taking off, right? All of that is taking off. Those are some of the new industries that are emerging. So startup industries in Silicon Valley, plus social media and the internet, that's like, this is like our new industrial revolution. It's kind of like our new Silicon Valley is like the new Wall Street, where you can enterprise and get things done and start new startups. It's like, I feel like Silicon Valley is like Wall Street, but with technology and products. I mean, Wall Street also has a product, but that's like more stock and like, yeah. So I feel like it's kind of like that. Like right now, we as a society have quit a lot of things, and we as a society are resetting and seeing, okay, what's going to work for us. There's certain things that don't work, outdated ideas, living in a multicultural society, living in a multi-generational, multicultural family. Like, I feel like that's more common for a lot of Americans. Well, not even just Americans, people in the world period. I feel like that's becoming a little bit more common, right? So everybody is sitting here wondering what outdated ideas, what outdated systems and structures we have to get rid of, right? So not even just at the individual level, it's a societal level. So this is all things that we're asking ourselves, and all things that we're reconditioning and making sure that we like change it, because we all realize we cannot go back into how it was before. Too many people were unsatisfied. Too many things just weren't running effectively because there were too many people were unsatisfied with how things were going. Which is why all these breaks in supply chains and people getting laid off from their jobs and people not going back into work and people um, basically being like, I don't like these hours and all this other stuff. It's like we're all just trying to figure out and navigate how to go, because the individual is confused, but also if you're looking around at the world, it seems like we're all very confused too, because like I said, we've all had mass death in the millions all around the world. And then after all this mass death and like breaks in supply chains, and then you're sitting here and you, like, not even just industry, but like um, humanitarian social movements, right? Right? We see that we can't have the same outdated ideas. Um, But I feel like a lot of people get scared in this time, but this is an exciting time. This is a time where we get to be creative and restructure and rebuild and figure out how things are going to come moving forward, right? Um, this is at the individual, this is at the country, this is at the world, and we're all restructuring right now. But yeah, this is one topic that I have for right now. But I'm done on this topic, and with that being said, I'm out. Deuces, bye, peace. Mm.